breaking news, bonus episode alert. I have not done a bonus episode yet, I don't think. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. But I decided that since our earlier one this week was a little bit short, that you were good for it. So today I'm going to read you a recent review I got, which made me, and I hope makes you laugh. And then I'm going to talk about a podcast I was on as a guest that is seemingly a bit random. And what I want to bring up is how the randomness of the podcast itself, the story I told on the podcast, how randomness in general can bring us to all sorts of unexpected places. It's elusive right now. It's vague, I know, but I promise we're going to make this tangible. As always, without further ado, let's get into this bonus episode of Content with Character. Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. Okay, so fair warning, in a meta way, this episode is in and of itself going to be a little bit random, a little bit all over the place, but we're also going to talk about the benefits of being random, or to use a different word, which I will use a couple, spontaneous, surprising, unexpected. Now, I can't guarantee that this is going to be fun, but I think it's going to be fun, and I can guarantee that I will try to make it fun. How's that? Full disclosure, I've been working my butt off for clients this month, February, when this is, as I'm recording this. And sometimes when I'm personally buried in work, I end up neglecting like my own writing and my own content. And what I find often is that it ends up being a little bit like shaking a soda bottle. Or like a champagne bottle. And there's just like a lot of creative pressure and it just keeps on building up. And sometimes it's just too much. So this episode is a little bit of that. It's a little bit of an outpouring of all the things that are on my mind. They didn't exactly warrant a full episode, and like nobody ever sees my post online anyway. So I decided I was going to make an episode that is uncorking my previously bottled creative expression. Poetic, I know. Okay, so we're going to move on from that like weird analogy and just get into it. Last month, I was checking my new Content with Character podcast reviews, which thank you for those of you who have written them lately. They've been outstanding and your words mean so much to me. So I'm checking them last month, getting ready for the month ahead because I like to read them every now and then on my podcast. And there was a very interesting one that came across my desk. It says, like the title of it already clues me into the fact that this is not a real reviewer. Emily is very talented podcast ever. I hope if Emily can also cover, they use my full name. I hope if Emily Aborn can also hope to cover topic about handling anger management. Like with example, the way famous actor like Will Smith got angry at Chris Rock by slapping his face and using curse words yelling something. Will Smith lost his temper since at the Oscar 2022 as something that Emily Aborn could talk about any upcoming episode soon. Oh my gosh, thank you, reviewer. That was just lovely. Okay, kidding aside, that was obviously written by a bot. So please, let's take the actual content of that review with a grain of salt, shall we? And while bots are definitely not what I'm going for, I would prefer your review, for example. But you know what? Like, whatever. It's 5 stars. I'll take it. When I first read the review, I was laughing because I'm like, okay, no, I'm never going to talk about that topic. I may someday talk about anger management. Who knows? Never say never. But I was like, that is just very random. And it made me laugh. And then, of course, I took the random incident, the review, and I made fun of it on my Instagram stories, followed by an actual really, really delightful review. So as random as it was, people had fun laughing at it with me. And then it sort of started to get my ideas turning for this episode. Like sometimes the random can be actually quite funny, quite humorous, right? Because also what it is it's like a little bit something different, you know? So I'm always talking about being consistent and focused and staying steadily in your lane as a business owner. I stand by that. And sometimes the element of randomness, giving a little surprise, is actually really fun and can be just what we need to create more connection. When I was in high school, my best friend Beth and my friend Rochelle and I, we had an ongoing competition for who could be like the most random. Whether we were singing a song or sharing a fact or coming up with an example or metaphor to prove a point, coming up with our next big snack or big idea, randomness. Randomness won every single time. Like we thought it was so funny and cool. I'm not exactly sure why, but maybe it was like our early form of creative expression. I'm not sure. But the thing was like, what's the most random thing you can come up with? That was essentially the year 2000's clickbait, I guess. It could have also just been that we were all weird. I did keep some fairly odd company growing up, I guess. We were all a little bit weird and misfitty, and we all somehow found each other. But whatever the reason, random was very normal in my world when I was a teenager. Nowadays, I think I got that all out of my system. I can say like I am almost 0% random. In fact, I'm actually sometimes to a fault wildly predictable. My life really, I love routine. I love predictability. I love certainty. I love knowing what is coming next. I look forward to doing the same things over and over and over again. I've created like an absolutely fantastic Groundhog Day for myself, and I love every second of it, which is super weird for some of you. I know you're like, that sounds terrible. But for me, it's like really one of the things that brings me so much joy in life. Now, sometimes this is problematic for me. It can get a little bit boring, or I can end up in ruts. I can be scared of change or scared of surprise or scared of the unexpected or taking new steps that lead in a direction that could actually help me to grow. And I find that like business owners can get this way regardless of whether or not they love predictability and routine and things like that. They can get this way in their businesses too. They can get stuck in these patterns, in these norms, in these shoulds, and the drudgery of what we've always done and how we've always done it. And they forget that sometimes randomness, spontaneity, it has a lot of power, and it can be a little bit of fun, and it can engage different parts of your brain, make you laugh, make you be more creative. Like there's all sorts of different things that randomness actually can really help to do that ends up taking you somewhere you didn't expect, creating connections that you didn't expect. Sometimes randomness wins. There are actually a lot of surprising perks of being random, and it can actually shake up your community, your business, like whatever in your life. So in this episode, I'm going to give you a couple examples of how I recently implemented randomness, noticed it. Like it's basically a compilation of a few things that have been on my mind. Like I said, they didn't all warrant their own podcast, but I want to show you like how this whole random thing turned into this. And then I'm going to invite you really to go forth, be a little bit more random, try a couple of these things out, maybe just for a moment or two, and see how it goes, see where it takes you. So to start, we're going to start with a networking story. And I think I have a total of 4 examples for you, unless I decide to get extra loquacious. Okay, so recently while networking, I decided I was going to try something a little bit fun and lean into some randomness or some spontaneity or some creativity, I guess, to help lead to better connection or conversation. We're all used to the same old questions at networking events like, what do you do? How are you? Here in New England, oh my God, we love talking about the weather. And then we follow it with like this insanely boring, predictable pattern. No offense, because I do this too. But it's like, oh, it's cold. Yup. Oh, it's snowing. Yup. Oh, I wish it would end. Yup. Oh, more snow this weekend. Yup. Like it's just always the same. So like I said, like I do this too. While I don't necessarily recommend, you ask somebody something totally random, like what did they eat for dinner last night or what color are your socks? Like that might be too random, although it's still kind of fun. But I do love this idea of like breaking out of these tired question ruts and these tired conversation cycles that just keep playing out again and again and again. And they don't actually really get you to anywhere conversationally, and they don't actually get you anywhere in making a connection. Now, I admittedly get a little bit nervous at networking events. I really enjoy like 2 or 3 people is like a wonderfully cozy group for me. But when it starts to get a little bit bigger than that, social anxiety, dread creeps in because instantly, as the group grows, I think to myself, oh my gosh, this is now going to inevitably be a lot of small talk that I'll have to make. And it's really hard to make a connection with people with all of these small talk, like with all this small talk, with the tired, same old questions. So lately, to help like shake free of the meteorological, go ahead and say that 10 times fast. Just try. I can guarantee you I will never try to say that word again. Okay, to shake free of the meteorology reports and small talk, I've started asking like a few surprise questions just to kind of shake up the narrative a little bit. It's just a little bit. So the 3 questions I've been trying out, and these are being flight tested as we speak, so I don't know if you should use them or not. But the 3 questions I ask are, number 1, what's your story? So just simply saying to someone, what's your story? It is like incredible what they will tell you after that. Like the things that come out of people's mouths after that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Sometimes they ask you a clarifying question, like my story about what? Like, oh, I don't know, the story of how you started your business, the story of what brought you here tonight. You know, like you follow it up with whatever you want. Question number 2, I love asking this. It really is a great way to open up a conversation. What podcast are you listening to right now? Or what did you listen to on the way here? Tells you a lot about a person. You can connect over whatever, the country music station or a podcast that they're listening to and probably learn something new. So fun question. What podcast are you listening to right now? Or what did you listen to on the way here? Notice none of these are like those on the spot cheesy icebreakers. Like they're relatively more in depth. Okay. Number 3, what's the next date? My husband actually came up with this one and he asked me recently and I just loved it for a conversation starter. What's the next date on your calendar that you're looking forward to and why? It is so fun because especially like we are in winter here in New Hampshire and it honestly is like one big Groundhog Day sort of. So I love that question because it can just kind of be like, hey, what's good? Like what is coming up that's good that you're excited about? Like what's something you're really looking forward to? And I can tell you right now, I am looking forward to this weekend because you know what? I am going to probably bury my head in a book all weekend long. And I'm not even kidding you. I cleaned my house a day early so I could make that happen. And I am just over the moon about it. So that is the next date on my calendar I'm looking forward to and why. People will tell you a lot about themselves. They'll tell you a lot about what they value. They'll tell you a lot about like what's going on in their current life, right? So it's so fun. So try some of those. I mean, I had other ideas as contenders for questions, but some are just like too random, too far out there. Like, which one of these appetizers makes you think of a food from your childhood? No, don't do that. It's just like those are the painful icebreakers, okay? But these other questions or questions like this, random questions that you have, curiosity questions, it works because it snaps people out of that autopilot and then it opens up for some real opportunity for a deeper conversation. And if they're not into it, they're gonna let you know. So then you can just move on. But it really does help you express curiosity, creativity, and open up that opportunity for connection right away. Randomness can help bump into that space, and it is actually quite effective. Okay, randomness story example number 2. I was recently a guest on Imperfect Adulting. That is a podcast hosted by Amy Stone, and I will include our episode in the show notes because it was really out of my norm as far as interviews. I tend to, on podcast interviews, talk about the same, like I would say I kind of have 5 topics, and I sort of use those topics and present them in different ways and have different conversations around them, but it's always those same 5 topics. In this episode, however, Amy and I talked about something I don't think I've ever talked about on a podcast before. It was actually one of my most random jobs ever, and it ended up revealing some like really unexpected connections in what I'm doing today. So I'm actually going to give you a little bit of a breather here. I want you to just take a second, and I'm going to ask you this again in a little bit, but take a second and think about your own most random job. Like, what was your most random job ever? Okay, do you have yours? When I really look back at them all, none are like just totally random. I mean, one thing always leads to the next. But the most random was my time in France, where I worked as a chalet girl in the Alps. And it sounds way more glamorous than it actually was. Really, I was just a glorified babysitter for adults. But that is the one that I had the opportunity to talk to Amy Stone about on her podcast, Imperfect Adulting. And in our conversation, she had some amazing questions questions. And she really helped to bring to light some of the ways in which that job has now connected to who I am today in some very, I think, impactful and important ways. So one, just some little ones, is like, for example, when I was there, I began writing a ton and I learned a lot about finding my own voice, actually. I was consistently creating quote unquote content. It was actually just a travel blog, but I realized how in that time, how powerful my words, what I'm writing, can be used as a tool for connection or a means. I'm going to say a means for connection. I don't like calling it a tool, but I had always written and blogged like my whole life, but this time was different because people were following along with my blog and they were reading my stories and commenting and emailing me and kind of like part of it with me. And it really, really sparked something in me. I also learned a lot about my own organizational and planning skills and style. I had always been a very organized person and always very good about my time, but this really, because I had so much freedom with my actual time and how I structured it, but I had tasks I had to do. It just, there was no one telling me when to do them. I had to be very organized to manage my time and ensure that all those household tasks got done. So in order to do that, I really had to learn my brain and create systems that worked for my brain to keep everything from falling through the cracks during my time there. And lastly, I just learned a lot about myself as a person, like who and what I loved, what mattered most, what I was really looking for in life. I read a ton of books, but that trip to France really did lead me to my next steps. And that's when I moved back to Charlotte and Raleigh, North Carolina, where my whole life unfolded from there, breadcrumb by breadcrumb by breadcrumb, and here we are. It's not so random in retrospect, but when I took the job on, it was a highly random job. So take that prompt for yourself, please, and just allow yourself to think about it as a creative prompt because it brings up so many unique insights and stories. You could use it for personal reflection. You can use it to bring out some of your unique difference, some of what has been inside of you all along, your distinct impact, okay? You can use it to share another side of you. Here's what has nothing to do with business, right? Or this deep passion that has always existed, even in this most random job. So I'm going to ask you again, what is the most random job that you have ever had? And if you want to make it into a post or a podcast or something else fun for your content, answer the question of how do you still use that in your business today? What was your most random job? How is it still impacting you and important to this day? How does it show up for you today? Okay, 2 more stories, 2 more examples and experiences to share on how randomness, flukes, spontaneity, unexpected, all of that fun leads to something actually quite insightful. These ones are going to show how randomness can bring to light something in your business or in your content or in your way of thinking, a little bit of perspective shift. So first one is about my trip to Maine. I was in Maine last month, or actually this month, February, celebrating my baby brother and my Aunt Teresa's birthdays, a birthday doubleheader, if you will. And so Friday night, we had gone out to dinner for my little brother. 2 of my brothers and my sister-in-law, we decided to come back to my parents' house and we were hanging out. My parents were upstairs with my grandparents, doing a puzzle or coloring or something. And so we went down to my parents' basement and it was yay, sibling cozy time. It was so great. So my brothers were playing music. My brother plays guitar. My other brother plays just about anything. And so they're playing music. And my sister-in-law, she started to indicate that maybe she was a little bit bored with the music playing. I was just enjoying. I'm this is just this is making my big sister heart so happy. Anyway, she's bored. So she starts whipping out her phone and sharing reels with me on Instagram. Quick sidebar here. I don't like reels. No, I can tolerate reels in very moderate doses, but my brain is it's just not wired for video. And when people send me reels, when I have to watch a lot of video, I can just feel myself getting internally annoyed. Physically, I'm annoyed when somebody makes me watch too many videos. And I can't actually really think of anything less social than watching social media videos in a room full of people. But there we were. And so in the nature of being a good sister-in-law and being well, maybe I'll learn something fun, I appeased her. So Here comes the fun part. I did learn something fun. When I saw how she's a little bit older than me, I think by a year. When I saw how she uses Instagram, my mind was like blown. And for those not on social media or those who are unfamiliar with Instagram, just ignore this part. I'm about to be really jargony and speak Instagram lingo, and even I don't understand what I'm saying half the time. So forgive me for a moment or two. We'll get back to normal in a minute. But when I'm on Instagram and I want to go back to something to look at it later, or even if I want to go back and comment on it later, or give it like my real proper attention and time, I hit the save button in the bottom right corner of the post. She does not do that. This is so fascinating. I was like, wait, what? That's not like your organizational system? I thought that was everybody's organizational system. She goes back and she just hearts posts, or in her words, likes them. And then she goes back later, rewatches all of her liked things, and she will do it again and again and again. Like, she'll rewatch what she's liked like 5 times. It's fascinating to me. And if she likes it after she's rewatched it, she said then sometimes it could even be like a week later. She could have watched it like 5 times. Then she'll leave a comment, meaning it might take her days for that post to get the comment from her on it. So I'm saying this to say, even if people are viewing your posts, even if people are liking your posts but not commenting, I guess it doesn't actually mean that they're not going to come back and comment on it. And it really taught me something. 2 things, actually. One, you never know who is watching because they don't always comment. And I would say they most often don't comment. But 2, well, first of all, I had no idea you could go back and see everything you've liked or loved ever. That's fascinating. So I was like, wow. But I didn't even really consider that people would use this app so very differently from me. I know most people like Reels, while I, meanwhile, don't like Reels. So obviously, it shouldn't have been some sort of epiphany that people use the app differently. But it did sort of strike me in that moment as a revelation, not just for Instagram, but throughout our content and marketing. It kind of taught me something. People are engaging with, they're interacting with, they're using these platforms in all different ways, depending on their brains, and those brains are all wildly different. And so never write off, first of all, never put your weight, all your weight into one piece of content. But second of all, don't write off the likes. Don't write off if people aren't commenting, because it's actually not a guarantee that they're not reading it and taking it in. And it's just another good reminder, I think, to be really clear and really concise when you give calls to action and direct people to next steps. Tell them what you want them to do. Do you want them to leave a comment? Do you want them to save the post? Do you want them to like the post? Tell them what you want to do. And it also was another it was a good reminder that not everyone sees things how you see them. So everybody interacts with posts, and in the captions, some people read the captions, some people skip the captions, some people only read captions. Like me, I'm often, if you send me a reel, I'm like, great, give me the caption. But sometimes when you think a post is stale, it's only because it didn't get likes and comments right away. And you might actually just need to wait a little while, because either people are going to come back to it after saving it, liking it, or it hasn't shown up in their feed yet. Don't worry, don't panic, because they may comment down the road. So I don't know. It probably is not that mind-blowing to you, but it was to me. I was like, oh my God, I need to write this down. But it was just this tiny random moment that actually ended up bringing me just kind of some new awareness and a lot of content ideas and reminders to all of us, in just that people are really interacting with things so differently online, our things, and we have no control over how they're interacting with those things. But it should be a good reminder of not putting all the pressure on every single social media post to perform wildly or to get millions of comments, okay? Last random thing, then this random little smorgasbord is done. My friend texted me on a gloomy Monday in February, and it was actually right after my main trip, and she told me to go look at her LinkedIn post. So, of course, I did. And what she had brought to my attention was that somebody she knew very well had actually been copycatted again. This is also by a repeat offender, no less. So like this person was copycatted by the same person they've been copycatted by before. She showed me the copycatted content and she showed me the copycatter. And in fact, I was like, you know what? I think you're right. I think this is true. Now, my friend is like a justice warrior. And so she didn't call the person out in her post, but she did use it to make a really powerful point about how she maybe would have in the past responded to that in a bout of heated passion. And this time she took a step back and like really let it herself process it and think about it and decide what steps she wanted next. So it was like a moment of self-growth for her, and it was awesome. And I sat with it a while and I was thinking, you know, maybe this is a good indication that like I should do another episode on copycatting. But then I was like, well, I still like that idea, but I'll do that in the future. But I decided instead, I went to go look at that like original piece of content that was copied. And it's someone I too know very well. And I know for a fact that that person has a lot of great stories in them. They have a lot of ways of saying things that are very unique and different. They have a very unique writing style and a very unique voice. But what had been originally copied wasn't that. It wasn't like their voice had been copied. It wasn't those stories that had been copied. It wasn't their unique perspective that had been copied. In fact, what it was just kind of like this quick tip little thing, which was actually boiled down in a way that literally anybody could have recycled and regurgitated. It could have been ChatGPT. Honestly, no one would have been any the wiser because it was just a little like meh. It was not very exciting. Now, I'm not saying it was right to copycat that regardless. What I am saying is it brought to mind for me a very good lesson. Facts, played out tips and tricks, information, it's a little stale. It's like the small talk at the networking event. But what makes you really uncopycatable, like what makes you genuinely, oh my God, I couldn't even begin to copy this, is the secret surprise sauce element of being you in what you share. The randomness of being you, which means bringing in your stories, your totally unique, fresh, new insights and perspectives, your sense of humor, your way of seeing things that other people aren't. That is the stuff that is uncopycatable. So bringing it full circle, that's the power of following some of these random threads, these little flukes and creative surprises and unexpected breadcrumbs and conversations. You never actually know where these things are going to take you. You never know what problems they're going to help you solve or what problems you can shine a light on for somebody else to help them solve. A random trivia fact could become the impetus for your next blog. A podcast you listen to could actually change your life. I know it has for me. A random story you overhear at the grocery store might inspire fresh ideas for your content, marketing, or your customer experience in your business. A seemingly random memory that pops into your head from your youth or from your weirdest job, it might actually hold lessons that are applicable for you today. And someone showing you those pictures on their phone or scrolling through the reels that they've saved on Instagram to show you, it might prompt some mind-blowing idea or new perspective for you. So my point is, never underestimate the power of being random because it has some very surprising perks. Now, to wrap up, as always, I encourage you to stay consistent. I encourage you to stay cohesive, true to who you are and your business, who your business is, and stay in your lane. And I would also say, don't run from the random. The random can spark attention and curiosity. It can reveal unexpected connections. It can increase your or somebody else's creativity. And those seemingly random steps that you decide to take could just be the start of something amazing in your life. So next time you feel a little bit stuck in a rut, what if you just lean into randomness? Allow yourself to write something entirely fun and random. Pop into some random shop that you never go into. Think of a question, a random question, or get ChatGPT to prompt you with a random question. Allow a memory to pop into your mind. Consider the most weird moment in your day. You could even go buy 5 random ingredients at the grocery store and try to make a new recipe. Anyway, all of these things are just to kind of help you get your creative wheels turning, to help you get out of the rut and the stuckness and see where it takes you. So on that note, I'll let you get on your way and be off and experiment. Next month, I'm actually going to be focusing on voice and personality really, really heavily on the podcast. There are things I get asked about all the time. And I want to talk about how to really find your voice, how you really embrace that, what I call secret sauce of you, and bring it to life. So make sure you don't miss a single episode in March, and I'll see you then. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com, and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.